Welcome to the interview discussion section of the Damned podcast and the NRR. We're a joint effort. And I am very delighted today to be talking with Raven, who is a fellow occultist and a practitioner of that which is seeking wisdom, power, and apotheosis. And I want to thank you very much for being here with me today, Raven.
Thank you for having me.
One of the things that, is great on our path, I don't know where you are in the world where you're watching this today, but it's the ability to get to know ourselves through the experiences and through the knowledge that other people have had. And you know what is kind of humorous? Primarily, that knowledge comes through learning from the mistakes of others, myself included, and everybody else that happens to be out there. Anyone?
Oh, yeah.
Anyone that's
it's all trial and error in the beginning. We don't want to admit it. We want to, be badass magicians. But like the truth is, in your first 2 or 3 years that practicing and dabbling, you mess up a lot. Like what you learn is trial and error. Like you read something and you try it, and then sometimes it works and sometimes you have to tweak it. But, I've definitely had a lot of mixed results, my first couple of years.
Well, I can certainly relate to that. And I had a couple of embarrassments, too. I don't know, maybe some of you will remember an old broadcast that I put out a couple of years ago where I accidentally cursed myself. It was very fun, where I was dealing with a spirit, and actually I think back on it, and with the trauma that happened at that experience, I should remember the name of the spirit, but I think that on some sort of subconscious level, I wanted to push that out of my mind. I was doing work for some prosperity because I had just gone through a messy divorce, and I didn't even have a sheet to hang over my window. And this spirit had a twin. The one I was trying to summon was one that gave some bounty from the earth. The twin, which happened to be a feminine energy, nothing against the company, of course, the stealer of energy. Well, guess which one I accidentally called by having one letter wrong. I was in such poverty that I did not have enough food to buy a can of pork and beans. And that carried on. I don't know how many days I went without eating. I don't know how many times I had my possessions taken out of my apartment until I didn't even have a bed to sleep on. Until I revisited this ritual and I looked and discovered my error. When I did everything properly, within 2 weeks, I received a letter from our version in Canada of the IRS stating that they had miscalculated my taxes over the last several years, and they gave me several $1,000s in refund. I found out that the union that I'd worked with, I was in the transit service at that time, had finally, after 4 years of stalemate, reached an agreement with a $2 an hour raise, retroactive for the 4 years. And so I got another almost $10,000. And of course, I was able to get a bed, something to put over my window, and things went on quite well. But it was a lesson to be learned. You cannot treat this, on the one hand, with such seriousness that you end up giving yourself ulcers. But on the other hand, you can't be flippant with it, not realizing the power that it holds, and that it should be respected in the same way that you would respect learning the martial arts. It's something that requires that. It was something that happened fairly young in my magical training, but, it was still something that is the most memorable lesson I ever learned, next to when I accidentally grabbed a burning briquette. Don't do that either. There's all kinds of things, and I'm sure, Raven, you have some stories too of what's happening.
There's definitely a lot of power in that people don't want to acknowledge. Like, they're like, oh, the pronunciation doesn't matter. And it's like, we've been around for millions of years. There are entities out the yin yang, and you think that it doesn't matter. Like, you could be like, oh, this mispronounced the end, but you could be calling an entity from like 3,000 years ago instead of like the one that you're trying to reach.
Or calling its twin.
Yeah, twin.
Yeah, lots of things that can happen. One of the things that Raven and I were going to talk about today, and in the course of our discussion, is evocation. And of course, that sort of ties into the story that I was telling you earlier, just a moment ago. And that's calling spirits to manifest in the external aspects of your perception so that you can communicate with them. And there's many different ways of doing this. There are certain principles that are true regardless of the different methods. But it's something that has a great deal of power. And I like the way one person that I respect put it, where they said it's like taking one of those old style transistor radios and plugging it into a nuclear power plant. It's a lot different than some of the more earth-based magical practices, because evocation is a lot more ritually intensive. It doesn't mean that it has to be complicated, but it is a little bit more ritually intensive in your focus and in the way that you call. But yes, I've always found and been drawn throughout my magical practice to evocation because of not just the power of it, but the knowledge that a person can gain from it as well. Because a lot of these spirits, and a lot of them have a bad rap, where, I think it's from the indoctrination of the religious societies and secular institutions of our day want to try to keep this thing suppressed. But, they actually have, if you are respectful, if you aren't being flippant, quite willing to share information and knowledge, not only about different things that may be important to you, but about your path in a way that can help you perhaps miss some of the pitfalls that you might not see in your awareness, helping you expand that awareness even greater. I was just wondering, did you want to share perhaps some of your thoughts on this, Raven, and some ideas?
Yes. What I've noticed about, like, I usually do evocation, but invocation I've heard can be, like, for me, evocation's intense because that's what I do more often. But invocation could be also very intense because you're inviting the spirit to actually possess you and create a connection with you mentally so you can communicate with it. And, whether you're doing invocation or evocation, you have to understand that it's, not a take what you can relationship. Like, you have to be willing to give back as much or if not more than you're trying to manifest. Because in personally with me, when I first started doing manifestation and evocation and everything, like, yeah, I gave like some offerings, sometimes when I was trying to do a curse or something, because I like to call upon spirits to assist with them, entities, and but sometimes I would just try to manifest like money or alcohol or something really stupid that I thought was important at the time, and I wouldn't give back. And after a while of manifesting, things started going bad for me because I just kept taking and taking and taking, and they got fed up. So, when I started, researching them, researching their pantheons, researching the way they are and things that they want, then I started giving more than I was, because, there's just a lot of people that believe that you don't have to give offerings to entities for them to work with you, and that they're here to be your servitors or whatever. And that's actually not the case in my perspective. Obviously, this is a very subjective topic, but for me, I believe that that they're here whether we're here or not, and that if they choose to work with you, that you should absolutely respect them and give them what they desire, because when you do an invocation or evocation, you're basically kidnapping them and forcing them into your home and then telling them what you want them for. So, you got to approach it the right way, because, these entities can get pissed off. They can hurt you. They can create a domino effect in your life. And if you're too arrogant to want to accept that, I just feel bad for you down the road. Like, maybe something bad hasn't happened to you yet, and I'm not jinxing you, but, eventually you're going to piss off that one entity that's like, okay, this person just keeps trying to use and abuse. Time to show them, put them in their place. And then, I can't pity you at that point, because it was your arrogance that led you there,
Absolutely. Yeah. And not only that, I think you hit on an important point, and that is giving back. And I think, perhaps the way I've explained things in the Northern European mythos might, give a good idea for those of you that are wondering, okay, what do you mean by that? They have the gift for a gift principle. It's represented by the Gibel rune, which looks like a big capital X, and it's referring to the exchange of energy. If you're going to ask a spirit, not sit there and order that spirit as though you were somehow all of that in a bag of chips. Asking with respect, not groveling, not acting like a fool or being weak, but asking with respect. You have to be prepared to give something back in return for that exchange, because it wouldn't be an exchange otherwise. And why should that spirit help you if you're not willing to do anything? And a lot of times what they ask for may seem strange. But what I have found is that most of the spirits that are at least of value to work with, some are just like impersonators. They like to come in and just, swell with self-importance and so on and so forth. Don't worry about them. The ones that actually are of great power and of great use in terms of helping you are actually interested more in what you do with what they do for you than they are for you reciting their name in front of a campfire 10 times. They want to know that their effort is not wasted.
They want to be acknowledged.
Yes.
They want to know that their gifts are being used properly, instead of just taken and then thrown away because you felt like it wasn't significant to you.
Mm-hmm. Or that you don't keep your word. That's another big one. I like this. If you don't keep your word when you are doing something with a spirit in evocation or invocation, you can expect that what you had hoped to attain by working with that spirit is not going to really be what you hoped it would be. It's just not going to be that way. It's just the same as if you went out and you sold a car to your best friend or to somebody you didn't know, doesn't matter which, and you knew that the whole thing was completely crap, that the wheels were going to fall off it by the end of the day, but oh, it was a beautiful car, it's in great condition, here you go. Well, how do you think that person would think about you as they're sitting there waiting for the tow truck to come and all the what they did to acquire that vehicle, which helped you out because, of course, they paid for it. What would they be thinking about you? They wouldn't be thinking very highly about you at all. In fact, you'd be getting a very bad reputation as being somebody who doesn't follow through, and in fact, causes more trouble than they're worth. And so, where it comes to the way we operate in dealing with spirits, we have to bear that in mind. Yes, that's a kind of a crude example, but we keep our word to what we say we're going to do with the spirits, and we hold that in very high regard. And it's all part of that respect. And it's very important, especially if you're dealing with invocations. I did do a broadcast, actually two of them a while back, one on evocation and one on invocation separately. But when you are calling a spirit inside of yourself in invocation, you most definitely want to make sure that you're not being flippant and filled with hubris, because of course you're inviting a spirit inside of your personal space. Okay, and it's also important when you're doing evocation because of the fact that you're dealing with a spirit that, yes, can hurt you. But again, we're talking about things in these terms, I guess, for lack of a better word, for those that perhaps have never done evocations or invocations before. For those of you that are watching and you are experienced magicians, witches, sorcerers, whatever you want to call yourself, you know exactly what we're talking about here. The main thing about it is being honorable, I guess, in your dealings with the spirits. And if you are being honorable in that fashion, then those spirits that are worth, not the ones that are just out there to try and, some elemental spirit that doesn't get, what I'm talking about, trying to be a prankster with you, what have you. But no, the spirits that are actually going to help you. And you do, yes, have to do some work and research these things, are going to, be building a relationship with you as much as you are with them in bringing forth your growth and your becoming, because they are quite willing. I've found at least the powerful ones are in committing themselves as much to you as you're willing to commit to yourself. But that means being honest and honorable not only with the spirits but also with yourself as a person as well, getting to know yourself. And
you also need to be upfront with your intentions with them. They know when you're lying. Most of them are telepathic or empathic or both. So, whatever your intentions are, make sure that you are upfront about them. And it's just like a spell. To get a spell to work, it's about your intent. And when you're dealing with these entities, it's about your intent too. So, don't expect them to help you if you're going to sit there and lie to them and why you've called upon them.
Absolutely. Now, one of the things I was wondering too, as we're talking about this, is in your own practice, Raven, what do you find that is the best sort of setting, whether you're doing invocation or evocation, for doing these types of works? I know you've probably done them in a very inside a sort of temple structure and probably out in nature and so on and so forth. What have you found to be the best venue in your experience for that, and what kind of things do you use?
For my evocation?
Yes.
Or invocation? I've usually done it inside, but I found it to be more powerful if you're able to do it outside in the elements, because you're not just tapping into the elements that you brought with you, you're tapping into all of the elements around you as well. I like to use candles and incense, and I always give a blood sacrifice, always my own, because you want to show that you're willing to devote and commit to them, that you're not trying to do the easy way out. And it also creates a stronger connection with them, I think, in my experience. And a lot of people are against it. And, I can understand that it might be scary for some people. But, if cutting yourself is, scary to you, they do have medical lancets that they have for diabetics. And it's really only a drop or two and it doesn't hurt. You're just showing your that you're willing to give something your part of your own life force to connect with them. And what's really great about offering blood is you're offering them something that they don't have.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
That's also.
but as far as like incense, I usually use the same three. I like dragon's blood, frankincense, and myrrh. And I usually stick to black or red candles. But if I'm working like with a deity or doing a specific ritual that calls for a white candle, I'll use a white candle. But there is like colors where candles go, and this is very subjective as well. In my experience, it's the intent of the candle, not the color. But some entities like certain colors, so that's when you would go ahead and use the color that's associated with them. Like when we do Hecate likes blood orange, orange, yellow, and black. So, when you call upon Hecate, obviously you would use one or several of those colors. And for incense, you would use something that they like. So Hecate likes myrrh. So you would use, your black and your blood orange candle and some myrrh. I usually use 3 candles and 3 incense because I find that 3 is a powerful number because it marks the Trinity. Um, so I always use 3 of everything. Um, and in Enochian and numerology and alchemy, numbers are also very important. So the number 3 is very powerful. So, like I said, I try to use 3 of whatever I'm using. Like I said on my altar right now, I have 3 candles sitting out. One a black one, a white one in the middle, and then a red one. Um, just to make everyone happy. But and then sometimes you draw your sigils out. Um, Deities usually don't have sigils. Some entities and gods and don't have sigils. Um, I like to use ends, but ends is kind of like a new thing. So like the older like Sumerian gods and entities and the Greeks and stuff, Romans, they don't are Norse, they don't have ends. That's kind of like a new thing. But I kind of like ends when I can find them because it like helps me get into the mood. Like some people use like ritual music or dark ambient music to kind of get in the mood, but I like ends and mantras. Um,
Yeah, that can be very powerful, most definitely. Um, yeah, I find that fascinating, and yeah, I can concur. And for those of you that are out there that are experienced in these things as well, you probably would concur as well. When you're able to do these things outside, it just increases a lot of the energy that's able to flow into that type of a ritual. And that's I found the truth or invocation just as much. But most times, because of course I live in a city, I don't get to go outside all that much for a lot of my rituals because if I did, if I wasn't arrested, I'd probably be spending some time in the local psychiatric institution because they would be saying, "What the hell is he doing?" So I sort of got around that by getting a planter and putting earth in the planter and mixing it with graveyard dirt. And then I put my candles in the graveyard dirt in the planter, which is on my altar. And it also enables me to use a lamp for one of the, not candles, but one of the lights, because I use 3 as well in a triangular formation. But that's kind of nice because it shoots up this big flame and it spreads light into the temple room, which gets, pardon the pun, as dark as a crypt when I'm doing my work. But I need to see what I'm doing. sort of as a past reference to the grabbing the falling charcoal incident that I just hinted at, that will never happen again. But, having that there, the earth disseminates all the heat, and so I don't have to worry about burning my face down. So that's kind of nice, too. And I use very few tools nowadays for doing avocations or invocations. Invocations, you don't really need tools anyway. But I have in the past spent a lot of time using the black mirror. And I've used it for more than just evocation, also as a portal for astral projection and also for seeing various things. I found that as time progressed, however, I no longer needed that because a person begins to be able, because you're not really using the mirror itself, you're using it as a focal point. And that would be the same if you were using an obsidian ball or any other type of thing there. You are using other senses that become as clear as anything that you see with your physical eye. In fact, sometimes you cannot tell the difference. And when you reach that, the tool becomes irrelevant. And it's as long as you have your space set aside, you're not interrupted, and you know how to maintain yourself in very deep states of consciousness. And it also makes it easier for the spirits as well, because they don't have to try and push through the different barriers of your own egoic mind that you have been trained to put in that place, making it difficult for those senses to be opened up. It takes a lot of unlearning in this process, unlearning the things that you've been trained to believe so that you can open yourself to what actually is. And so, one of the things that's going to be happening at the end of this month, I'll just put a note out for this, is on the 29th of the month, I'm going to be doing a workshop on scrying, which is, of course, seeing. It's not directly related to evocation, but it certainly has a use for it in that. And in that aspect, I'm going to be talking about how you can make a black mirror of your own without having to go spend hundreds of dollars to buy one from a store. Because actually you can make one for about the price of an old newspaper, a can of spray paint, and a picture frame that has glass in it. All you need. So if you're interested in something like that, take a look on our website at thedamnpodcast.net, and there's a workshops tab there, and you'll find information on that. But, getting to the focus of this, in the evocation, the tool is a focal point. I would just advise you not to get hung up on it, because we can take the fact that we don't necessarily have certain tools as an excuse to not do anything. But it's more important that you do something than it is for you to have the most pristine artifacts in your working space. And I think you'd agree with me on that, Raven. Was there anything else that, maybe stands out to you? Perhaps somebody that's watching this right now is thinking about really diving headlong into this practice. Is there anything that you would want to say to them, as perhaps they're not quite sure what to expect?
Something you should do is that you should look into demonology and research the entity that you want to work with, instead of just being like, oh, this one looks cool, I'm just going to invite them here and see what happens. Because there's a lot of entities and a lot of names of entities that are actually titles on the other plane. So they're attached to multiple beings, and if you haven't researched them, then there's no way to confirm that you've invocated or evocated the one that you wanted. obviously you open a gateway, somebody's going to walk through, but you want to make sure that you have enough research on the entity that you could identify that entity that walks through that gate to know if that's the one that you wanted to talk to or if it's somebody else. I find that that's very important because, a lot of magicians will not admit this, but the statistics of you getting who you want the first couple of times is unlikely if you don't know anything about them. If you're not offering them the things that they want, because why would they want to come if you've taken no interest in them? What would they have to gain? It's not all about you, you know. And a lot of people get really big egos and they think it is all about them and that, oh, these entities are here to do shit for me. No, they're not. But they're willing to assist you if you're willing to give them that respect. So, like I said, research them just so you know what you're dealing with because, you know, and there are, other authors that disagree with this, but they honestly don't have that much experience. They say that all entities are good and have good intentions.
No,
That's not true. A lot of these entities have very similar emotions, and some of their emotions are even more extreme than ours. Their emotions are raw. They're not controlled by the ego. It's just raw energy, raw intent, raw emotion. So you really have to take that into consideration. That you really want to know who's coming through that gate because they're not always going to be happy for a meet and greet. You got to know what you're dealing with, and also you need to know that there's a cost to every action that you make. There might be consequences in your life for messing with them and not giving them what they wanted. It's just you just have to know that no good deed goes unpunished. So even if your intentions are pure, if you piss them off, something could happen to you, and you need to understand that there are risks to evocation and invocation. I personally, as an occultist and a magician, a left-hand path practitioner, I feel like the risks are worth it. But you have to, get that far enough on your path that you accept that. It's not always going to be rainbows in a battle of Skittles. Like, you just really need to look into things and put in the effort and take the interest. That's all I really have to say about that.
Well, that's pretty wise advice. And I'd like to add to that, too, that you can do everything right and everything can manifest exactly the way you'd hoped. And a lot of times it doesn't happen that way. It happens in a way that brings forth what you wanted. But sometimes, it doesn't come exactly the way you would have organized it yourself. Because you can call spirits and you can ask them to do things and they can help you. But you can't tell them how to do it. They will do it however they damn well please. But sometimes, because there is an energetic exchange that happens on so many different levels when you do an evocation or an invocation, I put that caveat in there for both. If you are not prepared to discipline yourself, to know yourself properly, and you should be doing that before you begin doing evocation anyway, but there's a reason for it too, you can end up unbalancing yourself. Now, what do I mean by balance? Sunshine and rainbows? No, I mean having the self-control in your mind to be able to hold yourself on course, whether something is pushing you one direction or another. It's your will, and that has to have some developed strength. Because one thing these spirits do not have any respect for is weakness. And by that I mean, if you have no ability to focus yourself, first of all, to the exclusion of intruding thoughts, mentally speaking, that is leaving you vulnerable. If you have not got a strong focus on your will. And, you have that laissez-faire idea where you're going to pursue this one focus, but, the slightest distraction comes up and, okay, you're going to change your mind to this. And you don't really want to do it now after all. And now that you're done, you're sorry that you did. That is a weakness. You need to settle these things before you get involved in that practice, because you're going to shoot yourself in the foot big time. And so I just, I want to make sure, you don't think that this is something that's all sunshine, rainbows, and Skittles, like Raven was saying, because it isn't. It has great rewards, but great risk as well. And also, you get your own mettle tested, because sometimes those very spirits that you call will also test you to see whether you have what it takes. They do. They do.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to add on the free will is I've actually witnessed several demonic possessions because these people they were mentally weak. They didn't have focus. They didn't have, the ability to keep their minds, consistent on what was going on. And, some of the times we were just hanging out and it just happened because, they had dabbled at one point in time. And, sometimes it takes a while for spells or curses to work, or for entities to follow through with what you ask them. It's not always instantaneous. But sometimes, when you mess with these entities and you don't know anything about them, or you go somewhere and one attaches to you, and you have a weak mind, you leave yourself open to possession. So you want to make sure, if you have a weak mind, or if you have a mental illness, that you are stable enough to be able to handle an invocation or evocation, because there's going to be trials that are asked of you. It's going to be very, very tiring and sometimes stressful. Sometimes they'll demand things from you, and you need to make sure that you are in the right mindset to be able to handle that if that's what's asked of you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And, it's like I was saying too, when you start engaging in these practices, those tests will come. And, it's not all bad, but it's challenging. And it's all for the purpose of allowing you as well to see where you're at, not just where you think you're at. Because sometimes we like to blow things out of proportion, and that's part of the egoic mind, okay? Where we see things as they are, then we're able to actually build on it, not before that. And so sometimes we get a rude awakening, but that's all part of knowing ourselves, isn't it? And that's how that all ties into this. Now, Raven has lots of things going on online, and I'm really excited about that. I was wondering if you wanted to share some information about what you're doing, so that those that are watching this today might be able to connect with you.
I have a couple Facebook groups and pages. I have a YouTube channel called Under Lady Raven. I have a regular page where I post my poetry called Lady Raven. I share a blog with Children of the Serpent. My friend Tila is the head of that organization, and our page is called Occult Mysteries Unveiled. And a very, very dear friend of mine, David Romano, he also has a really wonderful page called Black Magic Exposed. You can find Black Magic Exposed, Occult Mysteries Unveiled, and a Facebook group that I have called Occult Forum Hidden Truth, all on Facebook. You can also find me on WordPress under Lady Raven, and again, my YouTube channel also under Lady Raven.
Awesome. And you know what? I'm going to get the text links for that too, for when the time this is posted, as of course we do record our interviews and discussions. But we do have our main broadcasts and features done absolutely live, just so that you know the difference between the two. But by the time this is posted up on the YouTube channel, in the description, both here or on YouTube, if you happen to be watching it there, on the website that we have, and on Crowdcast, I'll have the links to these different sites available for you to click on so that you can just go there directly. And I hope that this has been something that has whetted your appetite for, things delving deeper into magical and arcane practice, and is something that, you would want to hear more of if you're serious-minded. Okay. We don't ever do anything like this just for entertainment purposes. This is not for the purpose of, sensationalism or that. This is about serious sharing of information, and it's something that is a subject I know I myself am passionate about, and I know that Raven is very passionate about as well, because of course we wouldn't be doing what we're doing if we weren't. So I want to thank you once again for being here with us today on the Damned Podcast, Raven, and I'm hoping that now that the folks that are watching this have an idea who you are, I know some do already, but there's a lot that probably didn't, we can probably, if you're wanting to do so, get together online in the future to talk in far more detail about some things that would be of interest.
Absolutely.
I want to express my appreciation once again. And for those of you that are watching this, you're going to be able to see this on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, and of course on our website, which is thedamnpodcast.net. I'm Dan, from the old days known as Wodenson. Thank you for watching. Until next time.
You're watching The Damned Podcast, and we will be right back.
Have you always been fascinated with those who can see through time and space, either in black mirrors, obsidian balls, or other such occult tools? This is called scrying. Some people have a natural talent for skills such as this, and others give it up because they feel they cannot do it. The truth is that whether one is naturally skilled or not, this is a learned skill that can be mastered with persistence. There's going to be a special workshop presented on how to scry. We will be going through what is involved with this practice and how to actually get better through practice. As a gift in this workshop, I am also going to explain how to make a black mirror yourself. This will save you a lot of money. Go to thedamnpodcast.net/workshops to register.